Silence. Thank you. So if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Agnesi,
Present.
Mr. Allen,
Present.
Mr. Anderson,
Present.
Mr. Hirsch,
Here.
Mr. Collegian,
Present.
Mr. Macchio,
Here.
Mr. Mortimer,
Present.
Mr. Sadi,
Present.
Mr. Zaharidis,
Present.
Chairman Quish.
Also present. So our business tonight is hearing from Teresa Ake. I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but this is spearheaded by All In for Milford, a group that's been very active and proactive in trying to add value to our community. And so without further ado, the presenter has the floor.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, my last name is Eek. It's like short and scary. Like me, somebody once told me. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us here, inviting us back. We really appreciate it. I don't know if you need to know, it's Teresa Eek, 47 Point Beach Drive, Susan. You probably have that memorized by now. We really appreciate you all giving us the opportunity. I hope you all had a lovely Thanksgiving. And appreciate all the time and commitment you have for your community. Really speaks an awful lot. As most of you may know, All In for Milford is an alliance of neighbors and community leaders working to make Milford a city where everyone has a safe place to live, everyone has enough to eat, and everyone's voice is heard. We also understand that we do not have to agree on everything in order to work together to make Milford a better place where we all can live and thrive. We'd like bringing in the people of the community into the conversations early and often. And tonight we're here to talk a little bit more about affordable housing. And we're thrilled to have Carol Martin with us. I'm gonna just give you a little background on Carol. You all have a couple of handouts there. One that's affordable housing, and that information was taken from the Milford Affordable Housing Plan. And there's also Carol Martin's bio. So Carol Martin currently serves as the Executive Director of the Westport and Fairfield Housing Authorities and is the manager of Fairfield Housing Corporation and Sasko Creek Development Corporation. She has 6 years experience working for 2 urban housing authorities, 13 years serving as Executive Director of 2 suburban housing authorities. She is principal of Level Living LLC, which assists public sector and nonprofit organizations with the administration and management services in creating diverse housing options in their respective communities. Her most recent affordable housing development project was completed in the spring of 2024 in Orange. Consists of 46 units of affordable rental housing, 10 units set aside for adults with developmental disabilities, and every ground floor unit is accessible. I'm hoping that at the end we'll be able to invite you all on a little field trip and a tour of Lascana Homes, because it's really beautiful. She has had a lot of responsibilities involved with design, construction, redevelopment, elderly housing. She's developed affordable housing projects totaling in excess of $300 million. She's directed operations, property management, and a real estate portfolio in Fairfield and Westport. She has expertise in HUD, 504 accessibility design, and she's developed nonprofit affordable housing for for-profit real estate development companies. So she's got a huge background in all of the things that we care a great deal about. You can read a little bit more about all of her certifications and her background, but I think without further ado, I will introduce Carol Martin. Thank you, Carol, for being here.
Thanks for having me this evening. Carol Martin. I live at 358 Lindy Street in Orange, Connecticut. And the development I'm about to walk you through is in my backyard. I literally live around the corner. And it's a very interesting story that, how I got involved. We had a trailer homes on Route 1 next to Orange Fence, for those of you that drive up and down the Boston Post Road at 5 miles per hour on a Saturday. I'm sure you know where Orange Fence is. This property is actually on a street that is a secondary street off of the Post Road. So it's a property that abuts commercial and residential. And I don't know, David, if you're going to help move the slides, but I would appreciate it. Thank you. So that was the parcel. It was a single-family home, built by the family that lived there back in the 40s, his father, and then, the son eventually took over, grew a family, and raised children and got them through the school system, and then obviously wanted to retire. So they were selling their single-family home, and it was on approximately 4.7 acres. And that kind of gives you an idea of where it is. And, the Post Road, is a long drive through Milford as well. In Orange, obviously, we have a lot of secondary streets that, or corridors that, exit off of the Post Road. Some are used, as you know, as cut-throughs, et cetera. But for the most part, the Post Road has got, for the most part, commercial and retail. And that's the single-family home with some overgrown shrubs. And that takes you out, that's the view that takes you right out to Route 1. So it's, it's 1,000 feet off of Route 1. It's a 5-minute walk to a bus stop. And that is, for the folks that sit in your seats in the town of Orange, this is the plan that was approved. So we took the single-family home down. We built several buildings, 7 to be exact, 6 residential, and 1 community building, which is located in the center. So you'll see different styles or designs of the buildings. The 2-story building down in the left-hand corner is a 2-story building, and those 2 buildings front Smith Farm Road. The reason I chose, or myself and my partner chose to do that, was because the ridge line of that building was in line with the ridge buildings of the other homes on the street. So from the street view, they were basically the same height. The back buildings are obviously larger buildings. They're 3-story, but you really don't see them because the 2-story buildings that are on the front of the property, you don't really can see the back of the building because of the, the street level versus, the finished elevations on the building. All of the apartments, and down the right-hand corner is our community building, and because of our long agricultural history in Orange, we tried to make it look like a barn. I will let you folks be the judge if we succeeded or not. But ultimately, all of the first-floor apartments are fully wheelchair accessible, and the site is handicap accessible. So basically, anybody that has any type of mobility impairment can easily, leave the property, walk on the property, and obviously, be housed on the property safely. That's some more of the 2-story buildings that front Smith Farm Road. And these 2 buildings actually have 6 units in it. We have 4 units on the first floor and 2 units on the second floor. And they're flats over flats. And those are the community building. And the community building's open. We actually have a fitness room in there that has fitness equipment. And we know all of us now know how important recreation is, just simple walking for quality of life. But it also has a nice big community room that our families can use for events. We also can use it for services that we provide to the residents that live there. So this kind of gives you just a zone picture of the right-hand side where the trees are, and you can kind of see into the back of orange fence. And then obviously the homes that abut the property, and then the wooded area that's in the back. All of the parking was designed so that the headlights would be pointing into the units, obviously not having lights, pointing out to our neighboring properties. I mean, that was really laid out, for aesthetics as well as, making sure the property was managed and operated as a good neighbor. And again, that's another drone picture of the, the buffer, the wooded area. I mean, it was really a beautiful site. It was a single-family home with, maybe a quarter acre of actually green grass space, and then the rest of it was pretty much wooded. David, thank you. So that's the street view as you drive by. Another picture. So this is some of the major goals of conceptually, what we had in mind and who we wanted to serve. So Orange, very much like Milford, and frankly any town right now in Connecticut, we wanted to have a mixed income, which we do. We wanted to try to serve some populations that I knew in town were underserved, like adults with developmental disabilities. We are safely housing 10 adults with developmental disabilities with our nonprofit partner, Midstate ARC. We really, and probably because I live in town, know some of the things that P&Z commissioners go through. Many of you are on your heels with large developments coming in under the statute 830G, and it kind of limits, right, the ability for denial of a project that you otherwise would like to see, but maybe not exactly the way it's being presented. And so Lascano was developed under 830G, but not as a set-aside development that you mostly have had before you, I'm guessing, on many occasions. It was actually an 830G that qualified for moratoria points under the other side of the 830G statute that we don't hear enough about, which is called assisted housing. Because this project was developed using federal low-income housing tax credits, we also had some state bond money and some HUD home funds that automatically qualified it for moratoria points. So, the discussion was never, how many units do I have to build to, make the profit I want. It actually was qualifying because of the financing sources. And I think it's something, that many communities, including the ones I work in, Fairfield and Westport, the for-profits come in and they're going to give you a product that's going to serve, 60 or 80% area median income, and, that's great. But the problem there is we have, many working adult individuals and adult families that aren't even at 60% of area median income. We have elderly right now in my town in Orange that, are widowed and they're in their home and they're not really happy there, but because there's no real affordable rent in town, they just don't want to move. So they're, in essence, economically trapped into their home. So this gives them, a downsizing option that's affordable and accessible. We were, basically targeting young professionals with children, aging folks maybe not so gracefully, that didn't want to leave our community. And again, we also wanted to serve, a special needs population that, I believe statewide is completely underserved. So, we were lucky enough to convince our nonprofit partner in the state of Connecticut to give us the ability to create these 10 units as well. I think the one way that, I approach this isn't the only way, but it's certainly a way, that communities can start to look at serving families that are at or below 50% AMI. And many of those folks, I want to tell you, get up and go to work every day just like I do. They just don't have enough high-paying jobs to meet the housing costs that we find in Connecticut. Housing authorities obviously are a natural partner in a community, and certainly your nonprofits. So, although I did develop this as a for-profit entity, because I couldn't find anyone to actually do the project that I thought was needed in town, so I did something crazy. I grabbed someone that I trusted and I said, we have to do this or it's not going to get done. And so, I probably did something that, most people in town probably can't or wouldn't be willing to do, or, not taking on, there's a tremendous risk. Everybody knows that in real estate development. But the one thing I did as a for-profit is I really kept my mindset of what I've been doing all my life. And, the project's a success because, I started with, the first selectman. I started with your counterparts in Orange. And I wanted to do something that had the tag of affordable that everyone was going to be proud of. So I came in with sort of, a canvas that I created based on my own experience. But then the most important thing I did was listen to some of the comments and concerns that, my fellow elected and appointed officials have to deal with on a regular basis. And we worked together to try to be as sensitive as we could. And again, an open invitation to you to walk through the community or visit the community, with or without me is fine. But I would be very interested in any feedback, whether it's constructive criticism or compliments. We certainly accept both. But, we tried to achieve something that everybody drives by and they're like, how can I buy one of those? Or how can I rent one of those? And, that's a really good feeling. I think we're all exposed to so much of the minority comments that affordability and some of the negativity that it brings. And I think, it's incumbent on my shoulders and other professionals that are in the housing business to try to change that narrative, because yes, there are bad projects, there are good projects, there are bad 830G projects, there are good 830G projects. We don't hear enough about the good stuff that's happening in our community. So, this was unopposed. It was an 830G application. It was unopposed. I worked with the neighbors. I went door knocking. I did that, first of all, because I'm a resident of Orange and I'm already their neighbor. But I wanted to really get them to a place. They didn't necessarily have to, support it. Maybe they liked and enjoyed looking out on all of the woods. But they understood the need in town. And, most people know someone that is having some housing challenges, and there aren't a lot of options, and it's very unfortunate. And, we don't necessarily all control our own destiny, but if we're growing up in a town and we want to continue to live there, and something happens in our life, we should have these options, right? The community should be able to offer these options. So I think it's really important that, we continue to work with the for-profits to, try to mold and create the communities and the little micro-villages that I think we've, created here at Lascana. But more importantly, I think we need to start leaning on and doing outreach to some of our nonprofits. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a nonprofit in Milford, although I do know one really good nonprofit in Milford, or at least two. But, to start relying on other professionals that build the housing that we know we need that's, frankly, just not getting built. I didn't know if you wanted to go any further, David, with other quick slides. I actually had prepared this for the Connecticut chapter of the APA, so I gave basically the same presentation. It's really designed, to promote dialogue, to educate, and really to understand that, if we work together, it's whatever happens is going to be successful. It really just means cooperation and patience and sometimes being able to say no, and then also sometimes, to celebrate when something that gets drawn up actually looks better than it did when the architect showed you what it was going to look like on the board. So anyway, I'm happy to continue to talk, but I'm sure you folks have a lot more important things to do this evening, including watching the Yukon women. So I will certainly entertain any questions. Happy to give anyone a tour, as All In for Milford has already extended the invitation. I'm here to tell you personally, I would love your feedback, and certainly would love just even if you drove by the community. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the presentation and for the good work. And I would open up, if you would, there might be some questions from the board that you might be able to answer. So if there are questions, Mr. Anderson first, then Mr. Hirsch.
Good evening, Carol. Thanks for being here, and thanks to All In for Milford for being a sponsor of this presentation. I've had occasion to drive through, not just drive by, but actually very pridefully take people through to see what was constructed. It is aesthetically pleasing, and as you have outlined, a very successful project. And one of the things that commend you for is the close proximity to Route 1, so that folks can jump on a bus line and get to where they're going. So that's really commendable. I wonder if you can just outline for us what the income mix is exactly, and the number of units that serve those various aspects of the population.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. And I think I left all my paperwork in the car with income levels, but not to not answer your question, just professional courtesy that I may not have the exact rent numbers, because the brain's not working as good as it used to. But we have 10 units that are at 30% of area median income. We have, I believe, about 20 at 50% of area median income. I think we have 10 at 80% of area median income, and then we have 10 at 100% area median income. So we go all the way up to what 100% of area median income. And for those of you that are like, okay, so what's area median income? So true market rate, right, is whatever the market bears is what, market rate housing is. These are capped at 100% of area median income. So if the average family makes a family of four at 100,000, a family of four at 100% AMI, they're roughly making somewhere around $125,000, $130,000. So, I want to just give a perspective. And some of those families, are working 2 and 3 jobs, by the way. It's not a single income earner or, earning 130. It's 2 people probably working 2 or 3 jobs, 7 days a week to afford to get a rent in Orange. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but 30% of area median income is roughly someone that's on a fixed income, probably Social Security, possibly another public sector benefit, but certainly nobody making 30% of area median income could lease up a market rate rent in Orange, Connecticut.
Just a quick follow-up. Some years ago, I met your architects, and so I knew what was coming down the pike years ago, and they did a terrific job in providing the design. I also have had conversations with a former state representative who's a neighbor, and the first selectman, and they were all very enthusiastic about your project, and they help provide the necessary leadership as cheerleaders for it as well. So that's commendable. As a result, has that spurred other conversations about the future?
Yes, I mean, as you know, real estate, it's the right location in the right time, right? So we had a very willing seller at the right time. they had a number that they wanted for the sale. And so I had to make that acquisition cost fit into the public-private sector structure, which we were able to do. There's not a doubt in my mind if there was another opportunity that either someone on planning and zoning heard about, or any of, my first selectman or anybody in town, I think as they did here, they're the ones that, said, call up the real estate broker who has the listing and just work something out, But it was the sponsorship of that dialogue. Had that not happened, I would have drove by, the trailer homes that were now, being marketed as, removed, and that, property was marketed as retail. I would have not known about literally a, single-family home that was for sale, that there were a lot of elected officials and appointed officials that actually thought that was a good spot for affordable housing. So, had that dialogue not happened, I wouldn't have found out about it, and there would have been no Lascana. So I just, the thing I did learn is, the really good places to do affordable housing have to work with, have to be guided by the gifted staff that you have here, as well as you folks that are living in the community, having those conversations, knowing about the housing challenges that, we're not able to address. I mean, ultimately, it is a supply problem. But the issue is we're getting, many of these projects coming in serving 60% and 80% of your median income. And not that that population doesn't need to be served, that income does need to be served, but we're leaving out a whole bunch of people in that conversation.
Correct. Thank you very much.
Ms. Martin, thank you so much for your excellent presentation. You just said something very critical to the conversation, which is, and you're absolutely right, we have a supply problem. But the question is, what type and manner of supply? I imagine in towns such as Orange, the members of the Planning and Zoning Board and other boards and other individuals in charge would probably like to see more single-family homes. Orange is a town. You would agree? It's called the town of Orange.
Yeah, it's town.
But Milford is not a town. Milford is a city. So the mix of housing, I believe, in Milford should be a different type of mix than what is in Orange. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't even disagree with the housing stock in Orange and the housing stock in Milford, and just basically across the state, was built over time. As real estate grew and wealth grew to a certain portion of the residents of the state, there are communities that are just primarily single-family homes. I mean, the one thing I will say about Milford is, you have a lot more housing stock than Orange does.
The reason why I bring this up is because we're the Planning and Zoning Board of Milford. We're not the Planning and Zoning Board of Orange. And we're also not builders. We don't build the housing units. We approve projects that come before us, and we address the particular project before us. Can you tell us of any regulations that we should either add, or any regulations we should get rid of to make it more easier for housing to be built? Because I agree with you, we do need more in this city. But is there any suggestions you have for us as a zoning board?
First of all, I've never sat in your chair, and I really appreciate what all of you do, because it is not an easy job, and you spend a lot of hours looking over things, site visits, etc. I actually don't think that regulations, should change just because, you want to see a certain type of project. I think more importantly, there should be people coming to you as a partner presenting something. What we did in Orange, we didn't come in and say, these are all the regs that need to change so I could build this. What we did was, this is our vision of what we want to build. What zoning regulations do you already have that we could tweak to make this project come to fruition. And so that's really, how should I say it? If we continue to think that zoning regulations alone are creating, not creating the housing we need, then what we need to do is create the housing we need and then look at our regulations to tweak. Because, regulations are there for very important purposes. What we don't want to have is a project like this that can't get built because we couldn't change some of our regulations. So, tonight I want to be, very clear. There's nothing wrong with the Planning and Zoning Commission regulations of the City of Orange, Town of Orange, or the City of Milford. I think what would be helpful, that your regs would be incentivized, is to have a few of these partners coming in to develop housing, whether it looks like this or not, serving families at 50% AMI and less, and then trying to make it look right and give it the feel that single-family homes that might abut it would not be feeling negative about. Like, I don't know, it's sort of upside down maybe, but I just feel like more of those conversations need to happen. And, they did happen in Orange. We didn't come in dictating the regulations. We're like, what would be your recommendation? What would be your recommendation to take a zone that you already have and, we've already done something and we kind of like what we did, but it doesn't completely fit this particular project that we know is needed in town and is in a place that we really want it, but we don't have a regulation. I think the right partners need to start coming forward to you folks and the staff to really try to, get at some of the other housing options that Milford doesn't really have.
I think that one other issue is as I see it, and from my research and looking into this issue, is the prevalence of private equity and investors gobbling up tracts of land and gobbling up tracts of housing in this country. In other words, treating housing as an investment as opposed to where you live. If you have a firm like a Blackstone or a KKR in New York City, they don't care about Milford. They care about their profits and their bottom line and their shareholders. So they're not the developers, they're the financial backers behind it. And I think that we are going to see in this country, given the current trends of pricing in this country, we're going to see, I think, more and more housing concentrate in the hands of fewer and fewer people. And I don't know if we as a zoning board are equipped to address that, perhaps maybe at the federal or state level, but we may have difficulty as a zoning board of addressing that problem, which I believe exists.
I just want to say I completely agree with you, and one of the reasons why Lascana will be successful long-term, and we do have investors because of the instrument we use to develop it, but they're pretty much silent investors. My partner and I actually own and manage the property. How should I say this? When something's around the corner from your house, you make sure it's properly managed. You can't manage that from Wall Street. You don't have the exact same goals. And so your points are really well made. I hope your prediction isn't come true, that, a very small group of very wealthy investors are going to own all of our rental housing stock, because that wouldn't be good for any of us. But I really appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Mr. Sadi?
Thank you again, and good evening. I echo the comments about the excellent presentation by my other board members. I have two specific questions. One's pretty simple. I did see the PowerPoint presentation, great. How many total units in the project do you have? You gave us how many were AMI, but how many total units?
46. And that's 4 3-bedroom, 21 2-bedroom, and 21 1-bedrooms.
So is everything in this project affordable housing?
By the term of affordable housing, 10% of it goes up to 100% of area median income. So there's 10 units that is above 80% AMI if we're using affordability as a term under 830G. 10 of them are considered above 80%. But we are capped at 100. So if your family makes over 100% of AMI, you could not lease up an apartment in this community.
So one of the things that you did talk about, and if you could give us a little bit more of a concept, and I think the term you used, that you were talking about the federal tax credits, and it's coming into the package to be able to make this affordable, not necessarily affordable housing, but affordable project for the people that want it. You said that there's moratoria points based on certain, I think the term you used was grant money or whatever. If I answered the question properly, if you could answer us and fill us in on that, please.
Sure. So the statute, as you folks are probably painfully aware of, gives a town or a community for developing housing under the statute moratoria points, so that for communities that may not be able to get to 10% of their housing stock is affordable, it actually gives you points that you can place a moratorium, which prevents folks under a set-aside development. They're not allowed to use the statute. The safety net goes away, and the burden obviously returns to where it should be in your folks' control. So under the development that I did at Wascana, we were under 830G, but because we use some public sector resources, it's called assisted housing under the statute. You also benefit from the same points under a assisted development, and an assisted development actually typically gives you 2 to 3 times more moratoria points just because of the income levels than you would see in a traditional, hard money build private equity set-aside deal.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yep.
Good evening, Ms. Martin. And thanks for coming in, and congratulations on a beautiful development. And especially with the assisted housing, ADA compliant, I'm assuming. That's great. I'm just wondering, we're lucky if we can get 10% affordable housing, and you used to have almost 40 of the 46 or thereabouts under 100%. Commendable. But I'm wondering, are these condos or the apartments just?
They're rental apartments, yeah. It's all multifamily rental because the main equity driver to fund the project is a federal program built under Ronald Reagan. I'm old enough to remember Ronald Reagan, voted for him.
You're not alone.
So it's the low-income housing tax credit program, and it's one of the largest drivers of public investment, private public investment. It's built millions of units, rental units across the United States. So it's a very robust, very successful way that you can take corporate profits, bring their equity in to build the project out, and then over 10 years we deliver a tax return that gives them shelter benefits. And so, it's a way to take corporate money that's made every year, and rather than paying taxes on it, you can bring it into a local community, build your affordable housing, then over the next 10 years, you're getting tax shelter.
I see. And you said this was state bonded, the bonds that you yourself applied for, or the city, town of Orange did this, or?
Nope. So this was state bond money, so general obligation bond money, very similar to things like when you build your schools and you get bond money. This is bond money that's given to the Department of Housing, specifically to build affordable housing in local communities.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments, by the way. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, anyway, I'd like to thank you again, as we all were pleased to see your efforts come to fruition, and I'm sure it was a long road, and we may very well invite you back and talk about, you know, how do you put together a capital stack that does something like this? And how can we, as a town, the board is obviously reactive, but as a town, we can be proactive. So I very much appreciate everyone's hard work and interest, and I think we're all going to be hopefully rowing in the same direction. And that being said, thank you very much. Next order of business, liaison report.
No report, Mr. Chair. We meet next week.
Subcommittee reports. David, do we have a meeting date set at this point?
We were talking about January. We weren't talking December.
Okay, so we'll address that at our next meeting. Next order of business is approval of minutes. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, without objection, the minutes are approved. Chair's report, I have none. Staff report.
None this evening.
Okay, so we are adjourned, and just want to say happy holidays to everybody, and again, thanks for the public's interest.